G'day everybody, how are you going today? It is so very good to see you. As you can see, I have a guest, Lucia Philip, who is a marketer and has been doing this for more than a decade. I've known Lucia a while. I've known her for over 5 years, and we met because we have common interests, and we actually kind of first met on Instagram, which is...
We did.
Sounds a bit weird, but tell us how that happened before we go any further. What happened on Instagram?
Well, we met on Instagram,
yes,
but I met you in a non-stalkerish way before you met me because I bought your book.
Oh.
So I had just moved to Melbourne from sunny Queensland. I was very cold. We moved just as winter was hitting. It was very grey. And I happened across your book in a bookstore and I bought it. And, you know, it was for me part of really falling in love with Melbourne. And seeing it through your eyes and through your camera made me realise that this was a really special city. So I knew you before you knew me. But then I started following you on Instagram, and through that got to see a little bit more of the behind the scenes for you. And we started to chat a bit. I loved your photos, and 5 years later, here we are.
Here we are. With Lucia being in marketing, I thought, and she's an expert in marketing, having worked for people like Coca-Cola Amatil, which is the Australian arm of Coca-Cola, I thought I'd bring her in to ask some questions about what are people like us, content creators, photographers, filmmakers, what do we do in 2021 and beyond to be successful, to stand out? How do we be relevant to bigger companies who are looking for content and maybe they're doing it in a different way? So we're going to talk about that in a fair bit of detail. And the first question I wanted to start with is, how has it changed? How has it changed in the last 10 or so years from kind of pre-social media to now very much we're in the social media era?
It has changed immensely, and also the fundamentals haven't changed at all.
Right.
And I'm sure that that's much the case in photography as well.
Yes.
You know, the way it's being done, the barriers to entry, all of those sorts of things are really different to what they were a couple of decades ago. But taking a good photograph, that doesn't change.
That's true.
And it's a bit the same with marketing. Good marketing hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in 100 years, but the way we're doing it has certainly changed a lot. So just like the barriers to entry in photography have come down, it is certainly the case that the cost of advertising and a lot of marketing activities have come down immensely, and a big part of that is social media.
How has marketing changed in the last 10 years from sort of, you know, when did Instagram start? Was it 2008, 2009, somewhere around there? Here we are 10, 12 years later. What's the difference? I mean, companies did not have these platforms where they could just flick out all of this little information. You had to mount a major campaign in a newspaper, a glossy magazine, or on TV.
Yeah, that's very true, and much longer timelines for that sort of thing. Look, it's changed in a number of ways. Marketing, good marketing hasn't changed at all. The fundamentals are still the same, but the way that we do it, and like you said, the way we're communicating, what advertising looks like is very different now to what it was a decade, and certainly what it was 2 decades ago. Social media it's been a love-hate affair for marketers. You're right, it allows us to talk to our audience much more quickly and far more often. You know, it's sucked up huge amounts of resources in marketing agencies, and I'm sure it's the same for you as a small business person. It's, you know, content creation and managing those channels it's intensive, resource intensive.
Well, it's gone from being zero, and you know, you had a website which you might, you know, look at once a week and update if that
and a
often.
Blog.
Maybe a blog, to hourly.
Yeah. And the expectation is really there that if you're on social media and someone says something to you, particularly if it's negative, you need to be getting back to them quickly. You know, if they've had a bad customer service experience, that they expect you to be very responsive. Yeah,
of course, here at Matto in Photography, there are no bad customer experiences, so we don't have to worry about that. But we do have to worry about trolls. And of course, I mean, trolls would be a hard part of the marketing experience. Basically, you know, you've got to handle someone who's saying something that's not true, but it's still a case of you've got to deal with it, even if it's incorrect.
Yeah, you do. And I always say to my clients, you must address it.
Yeah, got to be front foot.
In one way or another. I think that it's much harder for photographers when it comes to trolls. The sort of trolling you see of brands is less personal.
Yeah.
You know, and usually there has been some sort of customer service problem.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas I think if you're a content creator, you know, or a photographer or any sort of artist, you're getting trolling that is about your work and it's personal, and you know, that's a whole different kettle of fish.
That's right. It's absolutely a more personal sort of thing. So we've had a change in the speed of which companies of all sizes now market. And, you know, I mean, it's acceptable now. Look, it took me a long time to go, oh, you know, we're just setting up the cameras for this shoot, so I'm going to just do a little Insta story and broadcast that to the world, and people love it. But it was like, but it's not perfect, and I haven't done the lighting for it. And even big companies are now just very happy to just share, like sharing behind the scenes has become such a massive thing. And yet there's no preparation, there's no budget, it's just part of the story. Like, do even big brands, are they just happy to sort of let go on that front?
So I think what we're seeing, and particularly if we go to content creators, so videographers and photographers and, you know, sort of the artists that normally a marketing agency or an advertising agency would pull in for an advertising shoot, say, we're seeing a lot more in-housing of them. So a lot of, particularly the younger, more agile companies are thinking to themselves, okay, for what it would cost me to shoot a great ad and run it as a TVC for 3 months, I could hire a videographer and photographer, a great graphic designer, and maybe even a creative, you know, the person who comes up with the ideas, and I can have them on staff and have us doing this instead of once every 3 months, once every 3 days.
Yeah. So does this mean that the cost of, you know, a campaign, surely that's now changed because the agency, often agencies are large, they're glossy, they have beautiful offices and lots of employees. Are they somewhat being pulled out of the equation in some situations?
Yeah, they certainly are.
Yeah.
And the debate that's running in marketing at the moment around this, and I think it's really pertinent for photographers, is this idea of advertising effectiveness. We know that some of that is your channels and it's your media buy. So some of it is how much you're willing to spend on TVCs. Some of it is also how good is your work, how creative it is. Does it have cut through? And I think that almost mirrors what's happening in photography, where we're seeing a lot of people come in. It doesn't cost anywhere near as much to buy a camera now and to just go out and start shooting. But the creativeness and the goodness of the work, that is really important in advertising. That's what gets you your cut through. That's what gets you remembered, and that's how you start to build a brand. So what we're seeing is a lot of people are in-housing, and they're going for young, fairly inexpensive professionals. And they're just churning it out. And then at the other end, we're seeing that there is still this debate and this desire for really good work. And that's, you know, you'll see that Apple's outdoor billboards, that sort of thing. You know, that even though they're saying this was taken with an iPhone, there's an incredible amount of creative work that is going into that. And, you know, they're still at the glossy end of town.
So agencies are still there, but maybe they're doing 50%. Or is it they're still doing the big campaigns and there's now just more noise? Which do you reckon it is?
There's definitely been a consolidation. You know, so there's a whole lot more noise in one part of the market, and there's a great amount of entry-level jobs. And then there's, you know, a far smaller than previous marketing agency and campaign advertising agency game.
So where this is of most relevance to us is, let's say you're someone like me, you've been in the industry for decades, you've worked with agencies, you've worked directly with companies. Like, this is not brand new. I've worked directly with companies without creative in the middle before. What's the best way for us to either impress an agency or impress a company to get a gig? Or do we end up having to say freelancing is less of a thing and perhaps we need to be on staff? Like, where would you aim? Let's just say someone who's been around, not necessarily 30 years, but, you know, let's say 10 plus years or 5 plus years.
I think that there's probably a decision to be made about which you want to be.
Yeah.
Do you want to be, the young gun that goes into these smaller, agile companies and do that sort of work? There's sustainability in that. You know what you're going to get paid each week, and but you will do a lot of work that you're not happy with.
Yeah,
it's just the nature of the beast when you're churning it out that fast.
Of course,
it's not all going to be great, and you're in a company. So you're therefore doing the work that they want you to do, which is very different to having the freedom and the creative freedom to do work that is good. So that's one option. The other option is to do more of what you've done, to create your own brand, and to then be a combination of on retainer, freelancer, and doing your own work. And I'm sure that maybe I'll throw to you actually, and you, because that's a scarier proposition.
Sure is.
It's hard work.
It's been scary the whole time. 30 years of being scared, I can tell you.
I was about to say you've been doing it for a while. Say maybe you could give us your take on what it is like to do that second, because it isn't easy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I started, I had the advantage of basically starting my business when I was 19, and so I didn't have a lot of responsibilities. So I was able to experiment. I was still living at home. And that allowed me to build a business with under protection, basically. But I very quickly turned it into a business that I was earning a wage within like a year, and then my business grew. It grew every single year for about 27 years, and then it was only really in the last couple that it's stopped growing, and we've had to deal with COVID and a few other things.
You spoke very early on about the fact that you had this protected time to build a business. I would also say, though, that you had that protected time to do what an artist should do. And build craft and skill, and also to build your look and feel, and your way of seeing the world. And I'm really glad you said that, because I think as a photographer, if you're going to take that second option, then you have to be willing to do that. It isn't just buying a camera. No. You've got to hone your craft. You've got to get good at what you do, and you've got to know who you are. I know I can look at a Matt Irwin photograph, and I can know it's you. You have a look and a feel, and you have a way of seeing the world. And if you want to be that second type of photographer who can build a brand and a business and still do work that they love and be in demand, then you have to be willing to do those years first. And that's your product. And that's a big part of marketing. We talk about marketing and we think that it's all about communicating, and am I going to be on Instagram or YouTube, and am I going to do blogs, or what's my website going to look like? But if you don't have a great product, you can do all the marketing in the world. It's not much going to help you.
Well, that circles me back to, if I want you to employ me in your next amazing role, how do we stand above, or how do we cut through as the individual, as the second version, not the in-house, but we want to continue to be freelance, which I think is getting tougher and tougher. But is it relationships? Is it network? Is it the portfolio? Is it people skills? Is it luck? Help demystify that scenario.
Yes.
It's all of those things.
It is, though. And marketers have this cool thing that we always go on about called the funnel. And the funnel, you've heard about the funnel before, haven't you? The funnel is basically a way of thinking about a purchase, and it can be going into a service station and grabbing a can of Coke, or it can be bringing on a photographer on a 50k retainer yearly plus ongoing work. The process is still the same, and right at the top of that funnel is what we call awareness. And all of the things you mentioned, the relationships, the network, the portfolio, all of that is about building awareness. And I wish that I could say. So 3 easy tips.
Yeah,
Get yourself an Instagram, you
Yeah.
know, do search engine optimization,
Yeah.
but it's not that simple. It's all of those things, but you need to build awareness.
Because you still have to be good at your craft.
Yeah.
And you still, I mean, something that I've often said is that you, as a photographer, it's okay if you've got 5 good shots, but you actually need to be able to, every single time you go to a customer and shoot, you've got to be able to deliver every single time. So I suppose what I'm saying there is we can all get lucky, but to be able to repeat it over and over again, and especially, I think something that a lot of people don't understand is, you know, I do a lot of lifestyle and mostly exteriors, so out in the weather, out in the elements, and to be able to deliver great results quickly and consistently, that's literally just craft, and it takes time, and it's that whole 10,000 hours thing, I think. Yeah. You're aware of that 10,000?
Yeah, I am.
Yep.
Yep.
So a marketer will look, you know, they will try and cut through and find someone they can rely on, because it's not just about having the looks, whether it's the folio looks, the network looks, and all that sort of stuff, but actually someone who's going to not crack under pressure, which I think is something that's super hard to measure, but
you know it. As a marketer, you know it.
Yeah.
And we have worked on shoots together on
Yeah.
various jobs. And I know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
those moments where something goes wrong,
Yeah.
or the talent turns up and they're not what we're expecting.
or you're being asked too much, you know, the client wants too much, like me having to go underwater, if you remember that one.
But I remember that shoot as well.
Yeah.
You know, it got put off a couple of times,
Yeah.
and in the end, you did it on a very grey, miserable looking day, and it was
Yeah.
meant to be a summer shoot
Yeah.
on the water,
Yeah.
and you have to work with those conditions.
Still got to make it happen.
Yeah, and,
Yep.
and so that I think is definitely important for longevity.
Yeah.
But if we come back to the awareness thing, the
Yes.
first task, the first thing you have to do is get them to hire you the first time.
Well, they need to know you exist as
Yeah,
well.
they do.
So what's the best way in 2021 for someone like you to know that someone like me exists? Like, do you look on Instagram and type in photographers, or Google?
Generally, I will go to my networks.
Yeah, okay.
And generally, what I will see is that even clients or companies that I no longer work for will give me a call and say, hey, we need a photographer. Do you know of anyone who's good at the moment?
Yeah.
Who's about? And I usually have a list of 2 to 5 suppliers.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I will ask them is, you know, what sort of work are you wanting to do?
Yeah.
And what sort of budget ballpark are you
Yeah.
thinking about?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to want to send someone that
Yeah.
I've got a relationship with to a job and they turn up and, you know, it's worth half of what they're
Yeah,
used to being
that
paid,
makes
and
sense.
it's, you know, it's double the work.
Yes.
But in order to get known, it's, as far as marketing goes, it's only the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
You know, even
I agree.
even the really big companies, you know, the Coca-Colas of the world, they're still spending something like somewhere between 40 and 60% of marketing budgets on getting known. And that's, you know, we think that's crazy, but even with the big companies, you're constantly reminding people that you exist. So
Yeah.
what does that look like for a photographer?
Yeah. So ultimately, would we suggest that you've still got to have your Instagram? You've probably got to have a website. What else on top of that? Because like an agency I work with, they tell me they get a folio, a physical folio from a photographer every day.
Yeah.
Yet
I would
they're
believe
not employing every day a photographer, and I'm still working with them, so they're knocking back lots of people so I can still work with them. So
how do you get known?
yeah,
Yep.
what is, like, is the physical portfolio pointless?
No, it's not pointless, but it's not going to do the job
Yeah.
on its own.
Not like it used to, because that was the only way. 20 years ago, that was
Yeah,
it. There was no
yeah.
internet and nothing else. Like, how bizarre. Nothing electronic. Prints in a book.
But I would guess that even back then, a lot of your work came to you through word of mouth or through someone that you had perhaps met in a social or
Yeah.
a work setting.
Yeah, well, you know, my plan, which I thought was quite a good grassroots guerrilla tactic, was I stood at a market for a decade going, hi, how are you? Here's my work, how are you? And I was friendly and I had good work, and my whole world started from everything that you see ever started there.
and we're going on a tangent, and I promise I'll come back to it.
You're allowed to be as tangential as you like.
The really important thing about that, apart from the fact that it did increase awareness dramatically, was you learnt the market. You were out there every day, you were seeing what people liked, you were seeing what resonated with them, and that's also incredibly important.
Yeah.
If you're going to do marketing, you must be in the market.
Yeah, well, I based, my greeting cards, which we can see down there on the card rack, I would base what I was going to make as the next range based on sales. It was that simple.
That's market research.
That's it.
Love that.
Market research at the market.
And data analytics.
I love that stuff.
So what can photographers do to get known?
Yes.
The first thing they need to do is know what sort of a photographer they are.
Yes.
Okay, so get that straight first. What sort of a photographer are you? Are you a landscape? Are you a streetscape? Do you do portraits? Know that, because a marketer and an agency and a company is going to go to different photographers for different things.
Of course.
So know that first. Then what's really important is to choose a niche. Now, eventually you want to be famous. You want, to be working all over Australia or the world, wherever you are. But you're going to have to start small. And the trick is to get known in a very small market first and then broaden that out. So if I'm a wedding photographer, I want to look really local, and I want to try and get as many weddings as I can in a very small area. So for instance, I might choose the Yarra Valley, which is, for those of you who are not in Melbourne or Australia, is about an hour away from Melbourne and is a very popular wedding destination. And I might see if I can do a couple of shoots, and I know you hate me saying this, but I might see if I can do a couple of shoots for friends there.
Yeah,
and I'm talking to the venues.
I don't think.
We don't do work for free.
Okay.
But sometimes when you're starting out, that's what you'll need to do. Make sure you're talking to the venues.
Yeah.
See if you can get a bit of traction there by doing 3 or 4, and what you'll start to see is you become familiar. Someone sees you in a couple of places, or a venue sees you pop up as a photographer once or twice. A bride comes in, she's talking venue, but she says something about photographer, and they say, oh, I know someone who's worked here a few times. And that's how you start to become known and dominate your market. And
squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
You just want to be the squeaky wheel that squeaks around your village, and everyone goes, there's that squeaky wheel again. Because that's credibility. Yeah.
And as a marketer, as a company, when you're thinking about marketing and you're very new, credibility is the main thing that you're trying to build. And awareness and credibility kind of go hand in hand. So usually if you see someone in a couple of places, you go, all right, they must be good.
Yeah.
And that's credibility. So that's incredibly important, and it's actually what I spend a lot of time, even in big companies, on doing. And in a bigger company, that looks like advertising through lots of different channels. Mm-hmm. So advertising on television and social media and outdoor, so billboards, will be much more effective than spending exactly the same amount of money on just one of those things.
Yeah.
So as a new photographer, that's probably what you want to do, is just see if you can get a foot in somewhere and then keep your market really tight and close, so that you start to seem like you're one of the biggest players in this very small game.
The big fish in the small.
Yeah, and then you move on to the next market and the next market.
That's good, I like that. And I wanted to just break down the difference between, say, trying to work with an agency versus trying to work directly with a company.
I would say, and if there are any marketing agencies watching, you don't know where I live, but I would say wherever
New Zealand.
Wherever you can, cut out the middleman.
Everybody, thank you so much for being here today. And if this is your first time, I would love to see you again. So please do subscribe, please share, and please like. Don't forget to jump on our website. And if you do want to have your name in the 2022 calendar, you must pre-purchase before July 23rd. Don't miss out. All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye.